Over the course of the last several releases, Autodesk has taken strides to unify the user interface between its various products. So while the intended workflow and processes between AutoCAD and Revit vary greatly, many of the user interface items are similar. This makes it easier to get comfortable with the software quickly. So let's just start at the top of the screen here with things like the application menu, quick access toolbar, and the help system. Here's the application menu. It's labeled with the big R icon here, and it's essentially the file menu. And it's very similar to the one that you have in AutoCAD. You can do new files, you can open existing ones, save them, export, print, and publish. So it's essentially a file menu. If you highlight over an item, the menu opens up to give you the several options, except in the case of something like the save or the close command where there are no options, but all the others have the little submenus that appear there. At the very top, we have these two icons here, which will show you either a list of the documents and views that you currently have open. In my case, I currently just have the condo unit file open. You also have this recent files icon right here, and this will show you an accumulating list of all the files that you've been opening. Currently, I only have 2 entries here, but I'll get additional entries as I continue to work in Revit. Now, if I'm going to work on the same project for a while and I want to make sure that it doesn't disappear off this list, I've got this little push pin icon right over here, and I can click that and it will pin this item to the list. So that regardless of what other files appear on this list, the condo unit will stay here. I'm going to go ahead and unpin that. Now I'm just going to click anywhere to close that menu. Now, we also have the quick access toolbar, which works exactly the same way that it does in AutoCAD. It's basically just a bunch of shortcut icons for commands that you use frequently. Over here on the opposite side, we have the help system, where you can click here and type in a command that you want to search for. You can sign into Autodesk 360, and you've got another drop down over here where you can choose from the various help commands and go out to the community sites on the web. So beneath all of that, we have the ribbon, which is the primary interface for executing commands. So if you want to run a particular command, wall, door, window, you would locate that command on the ribbon. It's organized into tabs: architecture, structure, insert, and so on. And each of those tabs is organized into panels like build or circulation, and then each of those panels has a series of buttons. And again, this is very similar to the interface that you're probably familiar with in AutoCAD. Now, in a previous movie, we already talked about the options bar, which comes below that. The next piece that's similar between the two products is the properties palette. The properties palette can be used in 2 ways. If you select an existing object, it will show you the properties of that object that you have selected. So you can see over here that I have a basic wall selected and its exterior brick on metal stud, and then it's got these settings down below. It's centered, it starts at level 1, and so on. If I select this piece of furniture, I'll see different settings. If I select a plumbing fixture, yet again, different settings. If I click a command, like the wall command, you're going to see the similar settings on the properties palette, but now these settings apply to the object I'm about to create. So the properties palette is used in both contexts. It's used for existing objects and changing the properties of those existing objects, and it's used for new objects that you're about to create. So if I started to click right now, I'd be creating a wall that's 4 7/8 inch in thickness because that was the type that was chosen. If I go back to the wall command, open up the list and choose a different size, like maybe a 12-inch size, you can see that this new wall that I'm drawing is a little bit thicker than the other one. Now, to get out of a command, I can get out in one of 2 ways. I can either use my escape key to cancel out, and I have to press escape 2 times, or you can always use this modify tool over here on the ribbon. The modify tool appears on every ribbon tab, so it's easy to get to, and a single click of that modify tool will do the same thing as 2 escapes. Now, view navigation. A lot of similarities between AutoCAD and Revit here. The most obvious one being the wheel on your mouse. If you roll the wheel up, it zooms in. If you roll the wheel down, it zooms out. If you hold the wheel in and drag, it will pan. And if you double click the wheel, it'll zoom extents. Now, frankly, that's what you're going to use probably 90% of the time when you're zooming and panning. However, if you come over here to the edge of the screen, you can see that this little toolbar will light up as I get close to it. This is called the navigation bar. And again, it's similar to the one that you have in AutoCAD, maybe a little bit simpler though, because there's only a few icons here. We have our steering wheel, which you'll find in all the Autodesk products. It works exactly the same way here. You highlight an item and drag, so we could zoom or we could pan. I'm going to close that. And you also have this drop down right here, which has a variety of zoom commands. Now, zoom in region is the same as zoom window. So you would just draw a box to zoom in. Zoom out 2 times is really pretty self-explanatory. It does exactly that. Zoom to fit is the same as AutoCAD's Zoom Extents. Now, to show you Zoom All to Fit, we would actually have to have more than one window open. So what I'm going to do is just open up a few other views here. I'm going to go to the View menu, the View ribbon, and click the Tile button. And if I click on the various windows here, you'll see that navigation bar always stays with the active window. So whatever window I happen to be on, when I click it, it jumps over to that location. Zoom All to Fit takes all the open windows and zooms them to fit. And then finally, we have Zoom to Sheet Size, which is actually somewhat unique to Revit. And if I show you that over here, you could see that it takes the scale into account. So notice the size of the text and the size on the screen. And if I change this to a different scale and click it again, you can see it zooms a little differently. So those are some different ways that you can zoom and pan. The last thing I'd like to cover in this movie is selection. There's a lot of similarities between the way that you select objects in Revit and the way that you select them in AutoCAD. Now, the most obvious way to select is to just simply highlight an object and click on it. You can see there that I have that wall selected and I get all the feedback in the various areas on screen. Properties palette, Modify tab, and so on. If I select this item, now this is furniture, furniture over here, this is plumbing fixture, and so on. If you want to select more than one object, the easiest way that you can do that is to use either a window or a crossing selection. Now, both of these are very similar to the counterparts in AutoCAD. The difference is the way that you execute the windows and crossings. So in AutoCAD, you would go click and then click to create a window, but you'll notice here in Revit, it doesn't do anything when I do that. In Revit, you click and drag to get a window selection. In all other ways, it behaves exactly the same way, though. When I drag, you can see that as that window completely surrounds objects, they begin to highlight. But before that, they don't. So notice these two walls up in the top and right-hand side are not highlighting until I completely surround. Now notice the wall on the right is completely surrounded, so it's highlighting. And when I let go, it'll select all of those elements. Crossing works the same way. Where window was left to right, crossing is right to left. Notice the dashed edge versus the solid edge, but in other ways, it works exactly like the AutoCAD counterpart. Now all we have to do is touch the object and it will be selected. So using windows and crossings is usually the fastest and easiest way to make selections. And again, it's very similar to the AutoCAD counterparts, except that you have to drag your selections instead of clicking them. While many parts of the user interface in Revit are different than AutoCAD, as you can see, there are many parts that are also quite similar. So with a little practice, it shouldn't take you long to get acquainted with these similarities and differences and begin feeling comfortable with the software.